Veamos pues, what is policy language in a dual language classroom? Policy language is essential for any dual language classrooms around the country, especially to protect minority language. Yet maintaining and implementing policy language in the classroom can be very challenging. Depends on many factors such as school resources, staff, advocacy, funding, and more. This is why it's so significant for schools to have a language policy in place. Traditionally, as Sanchez et al. Suggests, schools make decisions about what language to use and where, as well as the time allotted to each, depending on their own external resources, budget, availability of teachers, accessibility of instruction material, convenience of space, and scheduling issues. So in the following slides, we're going to be looking into policy language at my campus. Before we talk about language policy at my campus, I wanted to highlight some challenges of language policy in general. Historically, schools have not been truly interested in developing bilingualism here in the United States. The usual is to get them in programs that they can exit to the mainstream classroom, which are mainly monolingual. Now, of course, this has changed because of dual language classroom programs. So this is why professional development is very important, so teachers understand that dual language classrooms are not exit programs. So in the classroom, in a dual language classroom, it's also hard to balance and allocate time in Spanish and English. And also it's very important to understand that it's just not a complete full separation, because we cannot separate languages in our students' brains. So it is important to understand how to balance those connections between languages. Another challenge is standardized testing, because standardized testing is not tailored to the needs of emerging bilinguals. Sometimes educators feel pressure, and this pressure comes sometimes with compromising the loyalty to language policy, in this specifically to the minority language. One way to mitigate the challenges of policy language is by using translanguaging allocation policy. Traditionally, policy language can create a barrier for learning in both languages because it tends to strictly separate both languages. And when in reality, the emerging bilinguals need the interconnection of both languages. Emerging bilinguals need translanguaging to feel confident. It also increases comprehension in the classroom and promotes participation. It can also create an easiness to the stress and pressure that the teacher may have when standardized testing comes, because translanguage offers a more holistic understanding of the child as a learner, and this way teachers can help them go through standardized testing. What is the overview of language policy in EPISD? According to the website, the two-way dual language model, the policy language, the instruction in minutes in the partner language should be at least 50% of the time. Now, last year, there were exceptions because of COVID, and teachers in the program were able to do one day only in English, the full day, and then the next day fully in Spanish. Now, per our last meeting with Connecting Languages here in EPISD, we were told that that will be no longer an option. Students in grade pre-K to 5th grade will have to follow the 50-50 schedule in terms of instructional minutes in each language. The option for during the COVID, it was only available during the virtual learning. However, students in grades 4th and 5th have the option of going week 2 week. This is to say 1 whole week in English and 1 whole week in Spanish, only if all students in the class have a high level of proficiency in L1 and are advanced or advanced high on TELPAS in L2. And this would be the only exception. So in regards to policy language for the district, this is the setting, which is 50% and 50% of instruction in English and in Spanish. Well, in terms of discussing policy language at my campus, I want to talk a little bit about it. So it's Torres Elementary. It is located in the northeast in El Paso. We have a lot of military children. This school year is the 6th year of dual language program implementation. And when we first started, we did not have a lot of students enrolled in the program. So because of this, we had the one teacher model implementation. And however, we have had more students in the dual language program now. And so this is the 2nd year where we, I guess the school had the budget to implement the two-teacher model. And in talking with my colleagues in these regards, in what it is policy language, we all agree that for our school, the two-teacher model has worked probably a little bit better, just because it is easier to stay loyal to that 50-50 instruction policy. So how does language policy looks in our campus in a more concrete way? Well, part of language policy, I believe, is also the way we are distributing the minutes. In Torres Elementary, we have the two-teacher model, all day in Spanish and all day in English, and then students change classrooms at recess. And then we also have one teacher model. It's the same teacher, same classroom, half day in English y la mitad del día en el español. We also represent or tried or put effort in representing language, especially the minority language, in our walls and also in our planning. We talk about it in our PLCs. We make sure that the journals of the students represent the same level of quality and value for both languages. And we also talk about languages with kids, and it is reflected in their journals. These pictures here, there are some samples of our students' journals and of our classrooms. Conversations about language policy with our assistant principal, Ms. Rogers. The question was, in your professional experience, how does 50-50 language policy fosters or enhances bilingualism in our students? How does it help biliteracy? Her response, at Torres Elementary, the 50-50 dual language immersion model is followed with fidelity. We currently have two teacher model classrooms. Instruction in this classroom includes 50% instruction in Spanish and 50% instruction in English. We follow this model each grade level. At each grade level, the amount of instruction in Spanish and English remain the same. It is considered a simultaneous literacy model, as developing literacy in Spanish and English are focused on simultaneously. The 50-50 model requires a closely aligned curricular program where instruction in key content areas, ELAR, math, science, or social studies, are not retaught in both languages, but rather are built upon each language. The 50-50 dual language program immersion model is an effective model when done with fidelity and when following the model as it should be followed. At Torres Elementary, we are proud of our school learners and our highly qualified teachers that support and care for our students. I had some conversations about language policy with some of my colleagues. I was talking to 3 dual language teachers. One of them is in a 2-teacher model and the other 2 are in a 1-teacher model. And this is some of the ideas they had in mind. I think it's extremely important for administration to support and encourage fidelity to the program and follow the language policy at all grade levels. For example, You can have some teachers in grade level doing separate things and not on the same page when it comes to language policy. There needs to be a plan in place and follow school and district wide. I also believe it's important to have a two-teacher model option for all grade levels instead of 1 year, 2 teachers, and then the following year, 1 teacher. I understand it's all about budgeting and class size does matter, but we're doing a disservice to our students when we don't provide adequate resources and support and fidelity through all grade levels. Something that really made a positive impact in my teaching practices was professional development, especially with Dr. Medina. I was able to recognize the importance of translanguaging and how important it is to have flexibility in the classroom in regard to policy language. Sometimes it's hard to follow the 50-50 model when some students are not motivated to learn another language, or when we feel the pressure of them testing. This is when it's important to be reminded by peers that I have to trust the process. Once I commenced understanding a little bit more of language policy and how it's occurring at my campus, one question came in mind. How language policy nurtures biliteracy at our campus? And so I began to understand that once we establish that it is important to remain loyal to the time allocation for each language, it's also important to understand that there must be some flexibility. And how can we do that is by using translanguaging, which is something that we do in our campus. And I began to recognize and understand that this allows formal and informal assessment of student knowledge when they are in one language, and how do they behave and how do they act when we're in another language. I also think that language policy motivates students to challenge themselves to become biliterate. They push themselves to write in Spanish or speak in Spanish and read in Spanish, and the same with English. I also think that whenever we allocate time, there's a lot of cultural learning and a lot of cultural identity that is occurring, especially when we are talking and speaking and learning in Spanish. In conclusion, there's always a lot more to do. Nonetheless, in 6 years of learning how to implement a successful dual language program, even though we're not there yet, I believe we're making progress. We must remain committed to continue evolving as educators and administrators. As mentioned before, we need constant peer support and understanding to motivate students wanting to learn through another language. We must seek professional development and remain open-minded and look for research-based data that can help us be better. Create lessons that include meta-language. It is so important that the children are aware that they're learning through two languages. And very important, of course, follow policy language. And this way we can ensure that our emerging bilingual students prosper. Part 2. Components of biliteracy. In order to implement biliteracy in our classrooms, it's very important that we implement a framework such as Literacy Square, because it essentially shifts the attention on only the language instruction, but it actually includes qualities of the instruction within both languages. And in this way, we teachers can maximize that transfer and the cross-language connections um, between both languages for our students. So there are some components. There's the research, there's a professional development, assessments, and the instruction, and all four components are equally important in order to achieve biliteracy in our emergent children. Emergent bilingual children. There is so much power and profound reflection about this quote. This is why I decided to include it. It sets the tone for the foundations of literacy, making children more than what they were by providing a bridge between two languages. For me as an educator, understanding the components of literacy has changed many of my instructional practice, especially when teaching metalinguistic awareness to the students. And I also think it has strengthened my commitment as a dual language teacher, because in order to help emerging bilinguals to become biliterate, we educators must bring quality of instruction for Spanish at the same level as we do in English. And this is why it's so important that we keep on attending professional development, having an open mind to new ideas, research-based ideas on how we can help our emerging bilingual students, as well as providing them with appropriate assessments that actually help them with their biliteracy, not assessments that have a monolinguistical lens, but a bilingual lens to help them and develop their skills, their bilingual skills. There are so many practices that the model has, and what I like the most is the holistical approach and the importance of oracy and in writing, and the importance of oracy in reading, and combining them and using them all together to reach bilingualism.